That's okay.
Thanks everybody for joining tonight. I really want to thank Larissa for joining us and talking about parallel curriculum um, so that there's access for everybody. We're going to record this tonight, and then for those who have not been able to see this evening, we'll send this out to everybody that registered. We did have quite a few that registered tonight, so we will send that out tomorrow. Um, Larissa comes to us from Bismarck Public Schools, and our staff, Vicki, is very complimentary of Larissa and everything that she's been able to do for her son, Aaron. She said that she feels that Larissa is the reason that he's gotten as far as he has. So, um,
Oh,
and so she couldn't be here tonight. Maybe she'll join us in a little while, but um, just know, Larissa, she's very appreciative of everything you do. So
oh.
I'm really happy that you're here to share some of this information with families. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. And Erin has been my greatest teacher. Truly. Yes. So, okay. Well, so I'll just kind of start. I'll introduce myself. Like she said, I'm Larissa Schwab. I am an assistive technology specialist with Bismarck Public Schools. And I've been in this role now for about 11 years. And prior to that, I was a special education teacher. So working with students primarily with intellectual disabilities. And so that's kind of where I really got most of my background with parallel curriculum. And now in my role as an AT specialist, I spend a lot of my time supporting teachers and how to implement parallel curriculum and what type of resources are available to them and that sort of thing. Um, so we will just start by kind of explaining a little bit about, let me see here. I got to get my screen to advance here. There we go. What is parallel curriculum? Truly, when I started teaching, I didn't really know what parallel curriculum was. And there isn't really a lot of research out there about what parallel curriculum is either. So I find myself still working with staff who say, well, what do you mean by parallel the curriculum? I don't understand what that means. So paralleling curriculum is really just a way of modifying and adapting the classroom's core curriculum. So what's happening in that core classroom for our students, adapting that so that students with disabilities can participate in that instruction and receive that same content as their peers. So really what we're doing is we're modifying, so we're changing and we're adapting that curriculum. So the subject and the standard can really be the same, but we are modifying it in a way that it is at the student's instructional level. And that way they can participate in that instruction, the activities, the work completion. So we're trying to keep that standard as close to the same as possible, but we're just really changing the way we're presenting the work to the students so that it's more at their instructional level. So why do we do this? Why is paralleling curriculum important? So I always say we're responsible for more than just instruction on a student's goals and objectives. So a big part of the IEP process and a big part of our role as teachers is to make sure that we're responsible for their access, their participation, and their progress within general education. And so that's really where parallel curriculum comes in, is how are we giving them access to that general education curriculum. I always say that parallel curriculum, it can be adapted for any learner, subject, or grade level. I've not met a student or a situation yet where we haven't been able to parallel curriculum. So it's really for all, access for all. And the other thing that I like about parallel curriculum is it really takes the knowledge that we know that we need students to gain, and it just puts it into a more meaningful learning experience for them. Kind of a little bit more easy for them to apply and understand if it's more meaningful to their world and what they're seeing. So making it more meaningful, right? Something that I always say when I'm training staff on programming and implementing parallel curriculum is I always say variability is the norm, right? So we need to be able to plan for variability. no matter what we're teaching, no matter what level, elementary, middle, or high school, we have to plan for variability. And I always say there's variability amongst ourselves. That's kind of what this first image is showing, right? There's variability in all of us. We're not a one size fits all. And then there's variability within ourselves. Like even within ourselves, look at the, jagged chart here, right? There's a lot of variability even within ourselves. So I always tell staff, variability is the norm. So if you're coming into this profession, or if you're a teacher in this profession, you have to be able to plan for that variability. Every student in your classroom is going to be different. So how are we planning for that variability? And what I kind of tend to find is that, I think as a society and kind of as a world, we tend to plan more for physical variabilities because we can see them. But how do we design and plan for that variability that we can't always see? Those students in our classrooms who are just have different ways of learning. They need more multisensory approaches. Maybe they need more sensory motor approaches. There's so many curriculums put out there, but there's not a plan for that variability, right? And that's where specialists come in. That's where special education comes in. But parallel curriculum really can't be done without that tie to general education because they are the content experts. So what I like about parallel curriculum is it addresses that learner variability. And I like to always sort of reference that universal design for learning when I'm talking about parallel curriculum, because a lot of what you'll see in this presentation and a lot of what we're making and creating and using with students is really essential for some, but it is actually very good for all. Because what we know about a lot of our learners is they are multisensory. They do need it to make it very meaningful. They do need it in repetition. They need it more visual. A lot of those things are very good for all. Another thing that I say to staff when we're training on how to implement parallel curriculum, how do I, keep the standard the same, but bring it to my students' instructional level? I always say, try to be tight on the goal, but flexible on the means, flexible on how you get there. And that flexible thinking really opens up kind of that creative process for, oh yeah, I can tie it to this and I can tie it to this, or we could present it like this. So being flexible on the means of how we're getting there. Sometimes that shift is hard for general education. And again, that's where I think special education is really important, because I think when they can model being flexible on that means and provide the support and provide different resources, then general education can kind of start to see, oh, hey, yes, my student can learn when it's in this particular way for them. So tight on the goal, flexible on the means. So question that I get asked most often whether I have new staff or whether I'm training staff or whatever, the staff have a student that maybe they've not had to do this type of programming for before. It's like, well, where do I even start with parallel curriculum? So now I know what it means, right? You're telling me I need to take this standard or this goal or this concept. We're studying cells in 7th grade biology. Okay. Now you're telling me I have to take that essential question or that standard or whatever it is, and now I need to bring it to my students' instructional level. So they're like, how do I even start this? Where do I even go? So the first thing I always say is when we're talking about paralleling curriculum is it's so important from the special education end, which is the end that I'm usually on, that we are finding time to collaborate with those general education teachers. So I always say they are the content experts. So if I have to parallel 7th grade science, okay, I'm not the content expert in science, right? I have a lot of ideas as to how I could take this to my students' instructional level, but I need them to tell me exactly what they want my student to be able to know, right? They're the content experts. So we have to make sure that it's general education and special education working together. And there's accountability from both. That can get a little bit tricky when you're in a middle school or a high school, if we have some at those level, because there's a lot of teachers. But I promise over time it gets easier because a library of resources will be built. So the number one thing I always say is you have to involve general education. They're the content experts, and you have to get creative and make it scheduled and predictable. So if I have a couple of students that I need to parallel curriculum for, or one student, I'm going to say, okay, we need to set a scheduled and predictable time. We're going to meet the second Tuesday of every month after school, or every other Tuesday after school, or whatever it is. But I've just found that making that time scheduled and predictable is really, I think, what leads to the most success, because you have the best communication with the general education teacher. And sometimes it does mean you have to really advocate for that. You have to go to administration, whatever it might be, but say, I need this time. I need this time together. So how can we make this happen? The other thing, again, going back to general ed, is I always start by looking at those standards and benchmarks, and I ask for pacing guides. And I did link one in here. I'll click on this just so you guys can kind of see it. Tell me if you can't see this. Can you guys see this as it pulled up? Yeah, okay. So a lot of times classrooms will have this, and I'll say, where's your pacing guide? A lot of times they'll have, the concept or resources, whatever, rubrics, scales, whatever it is they're using, but this just gives me a starting point. So I kind of have their map of where they're going. And again, it has those essential questions. It has what they are expecting all students to know. So we know, okay, what is our student expected to know? So asking for those pacing guides, or whatever it is that they're using to kind of keep a curriculum map of what they're doing in their classroom. I always say, try very hard to relate content to the student and the world around them. Provide different types of activities for content and practice as much as you can. Multisensory. Think about our sensory motor learners. Activate as many of those senses as we possibly can so that we're engaging all of that in their learning. I always say, find ways to organize and build a library of resources. So where are we going to put all of this? This is a real issue that we run into with parallel curriculum, because now we're creating all of these resources, but where are we putting them, and how are we organizing them so that I can access them again, next year when another student comes to this unit, or when I have another student in third grade that's studying the planets, I want to be able to use this again. So how are you going to organize it? Where are you going to put it all? What resources do you need to do that? Sometimes even designing parallel curriculum at the beginning, you have to advocate for resources. I've had to do that where I've had to say, okay, this student needs this to access the general education curriculum. And we need help to do this. We need a person. We need a person creating. We need a person who has designated time in their day to help support this student in doing this. We need resources. I need access to color printers. I need access to visuals. I need access to laminators and Velcro, or whatever it is that we're using to create. Having that plan ahead of time and then advocating for that. Sometimes that's a hard part, and there can be hard conversations, but in the long run, most everybody that I've had to go to advocate for, to ask for, has seen the benefits tenfold. And I feel like they've realized that it's a huge part of special education programming, and have learned to kind of invest the supports ahead of time. So we're not being so retroactive in how we're supporting students. Begin with an organizational plan in mind. Like when I first started, I remember we were just like, in fact, it was probably with Vicki, right? We were using filing cabinets, and I was using file folders, and I was doing it by like grade level and concept and theme, or whatever it might be. And I kind of had to quickly learn to do it on the fly. And as I got further along, I really started realizing, okay, I need a different way to organize this so that I can always go back and find it. Or the materials that I was using weren't holding up. Okay, so I need to invest in a better laminator, or, I can't use purple glue sticks because, they don't wear well over time. Whatever it might be that I'm using to create, You learn those things over time, but having a way to organize it is critical because you don't always just want to create consumable resources that can only be used one time. You want to be able to build a library that you can use over time for multiple students. And then the last thing is really know your learner. So that's one of the most important things when creating parallel curriculum is it does have to be very individualized. How does my student learn? What does their work need to look like? What level of visual supports do they need? What level of repetition do they need in their learning? But knowing your learner and knowing your characteristics is what's going to drive how you design that parallel curriculum for them. So know your learner and know their characteristics. So getting a little bit deeper into those learner characteristics, really the most effective way to really adapt in a very inclusive classroom is to make it very individualized and student specific. So before you really begin modifying, know your students' goals, needs. The thing that I say is whatever you're creating, we always want to make sure that it can be implemented in the least restrictive environment. So if I'm creating parallel curriculum for 7th grade life science on cells, and I want my student to do this with as much independence as possible, I always have to keep that at the forefront because I want them to be able to do this in the general education classroom with minimal supports at times. Maybe sometimes some of it will be full adult support, but this should be taking place in the general education classroom. So our student can stay in that classroom, receive the instruction, and then do parallel curriculum. So I always talk about, can this be implemented in the least restrictive environment? And if it isn't, how can we make it implement? Like, how can we make that happen in this environment? So digging a little bit deeper, I just did this as sort of an example so that you guys could kind of see how we can take something like I used an example of a book report, kind of break it apart into different levels and how I can parallel that in 3 different ways. So again, my student has the same expectation and the same standard, but I'm just changing the way it looks for them. And it's being designed to be more at their instructional level. So an example, I'm just going to say level 1, example of a level 1 learner. They might be able to write simple sentences, read sight words, read books with reduced text. They might work best when materials are really organized and structured. Okay, there's one type of a learner. Maybe a level 2 learner, next level. Maybe they need photographs. Maybe they need symbols in their learning. Maybe they can't read as many sight words. Maybe they can only create written work with symbols and with their visuals as a guide to do that. Level 3, this is a learner that maybe understands concepts best when they can see, touch, move, and manipulate items. Maybe they need objects as a means to learn to read or to even understand a schedule. Maybe they have limited understanding of print and symbols and words. They may not have functional vision. Maybe they can make choices, but only when given to a correct answer and a non-answer. So I'm doing this just to kind of show you guys like the different levels of learners that you might encounter in your teaching or in your instruction. And now how can we change, keeping the same standard and the same goal, and change that work to match their learner characteristics? So an example is just reading comprehension. This is just a basic book report kind of example where students have to be able to identify the topic and they have to be able to use information in the text to answer questions. Okay, so those are the standards that my student has to be able to perform. So let's look at this level 1. So again, that level 1, they can write some simple sentences, they can read sight words, their material should be organized. So if we look at this, okay, so here I can see it's very organized, right? There is writing involved. The text is pretty reduced. There's some sight words in there because again, they can read those sight words. It allows the student to write very simple sentences, 1-word answers if needed. And it's sort of in a template form. which allows students to have that predictability in their work. And what I mean by a template is I may do a book report a month or something like that in my classroom, but I keep this template the same for my student every month. Because again, it's creating that predictability in their work, it's building that independence. Templates are a really great way to build independence for students in the classroom because it always kind of gives them that, oh, I know this. I know how much work I have to do. I know about how long this is going to take me because I'm used to this and I've seen it before. So I like to use templates for students when it's appropriate. So in looking at this, this is more of, like I said, that level 1. If we go to that level 2, again, this is going to be more symbols and more photographs, probably not as many sight words, maybe needs symbols for written work. So you can see here, there's symbols. There's not as many sight words. It's very visual. The student can look at the task and know what to do, right? I can look at that and I know I'm going to circle one of these. And there's no writing. It's just circling involved. So again, it's that same standard. He still has to be able to share information about the text and answer questions, right? But it's just done in a way that is more at his instructional level and providing more of the supports that he needs. Then if we go to that level 3, again, maybe they need to touch, see, and move things. Maybe they need real objects. They need 2 choices instead of 3 or 4 choices, whatever it might be. So you can see here, this is an activity where they're like cutting it out and pasting the answer in the orange box. It's hands-on. They can move, touch, and see it. There's limited choices. It uses pictures of real objects. It's very visual. The student can look at this task and know what to do. So again, I kept that standard the same, the expectation the same. I'm just putting this activity at their instructional level. So I did this just so you guys could kind of see how you can take one lesson and just using your learner characteristics, parallel it and design it more to their instructional level, but keeping those that, like I talked about at the beginning, be tight on that goal, but be really flexible on your means as to how you're helping your student get there. Before I go on to just explaining how important visuals are there any questions so far that I could answer?
Any questions at all for Larissa so far? Don't be shy.
Nope, don't be shy.
Well, mine is not a question, but hello, Larissa. This is Vicki.
Hi. Hey, Vicki. How are you? Good to hear your voice.
Good to hear yours too. Aaron did come by and wave to you, by the way. So,
oh,
yeah. I know some of the other people on this call, but I do have to say that if it was not for Larissa and really doing this parallel curriculum, I'm not sure my son with autism ID would have been able to be in a general education classroom. It would have just been too difficult because of the way he needed to learn. And so I just wanted to share that those that are on the call that still know me, Aaron is 21 now, and Larissa started at kindergarten, and he was extremely successful in school all the way through Life Ed and is now successful. So I have to say that when she was talking about storing this stuff and advocating, it really does have to happen. And, as a parent, you should be involved in that too. Larissa was always open to my involvement, which was really taught me going in this area. But the whole fact is too, a lot of this our children are in school so long. And, Larissa, I hope will touch on this a little bit with you guys as well, is that Aaron uses this at home in the community, the things that he learned in school, and now we've learned how to adapt it in the community. And, he's able to access all those same other things that, I'll be honest with you, Larissa will not, I wasn't sure he'd be able to do that, but he has. So
awesome.
Yeah, I just want the rest of you, as she continues through this, you are listening to the absolute best in the state. So
Oh,
I have no
oh my
doubt
gosh.
about that. So I'm glad this is being recorded too, because I think there's a lot of people that will get a lot of really good information on this. And I even had a hard time understanding right in the beginning what parallel curriculum was. And so I think with Larissa and the team, it really became to light. And now that Aaron's 21, I hope a lot of his stuff is still being stored and still being used. So,
oh, it is. It's funny. I'll come across something at a school and I'll be like, hey, I made that like back in 2012. But yeah, there's still a lot out there that I see now and then. But
and I
yes.
appreciate this too, because I think what you've shown so far is a really good visual and understanding of really what that is. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to kind of get back into it here because I'm one that I kind of really have to see it. So I really did want you guys to see some examples of paralleling and visually look at what it looks like. It seems like any kind of presentation I do, I always have to have a slide or two in there about the importance of visuals. So this is a little bit on my soapbox, but visuals and visual supports are a huge part of parallel curriculum. It's also a mode that many of our students learn best in is with visual supports. So I just always tell staff, you can never underestimate the importance of visuals for students. Visuals. I always say they support memory. They are concrete. They're not fleeting like our auditory language or what we hear or even what we say. It turns that verbal information into visual information. Make sure if you're using visuals, I always say that you're using visuals that really do provide meaning and good visual representation for students. You know, some students, a visual support even can be a list, whereas some students need an actual list with pictures. So just, again, knowing your student. Visuals aren't just like little pictures of things. You know, I always say even the work that we're doing when we're designing parallel curriculum, when I'm designing an activity for a student, like think back to that book report that I just showed you guys. I'm thinking about the visual structure of that task. So I'm thinking about, okay, do I have visual clarity in this task? So like, can the student look at it and know what to do? Because that's important, right? Because if I'm having to be there and do it with them every step of the way, then I'm taking away that independence for them. Yes, I might need to pre-teach it a couple of times, but eventually I want him to be able to look at this and know what to do. Visual instructions. Sometimes the materials themselves can just define those tasks. If you think about like, if you've ever seen like a Velcro activity, like a file folder with Velcro, or maybe you match or you tear a piece of Velcro off and put it on something, those are materials defining themselves, right? So again, he doesn't need that adult next to him because he can open it up and be like, oh, I know what to do here. I match these, or I pull this down here and I put it over here. And then is it organized? We always want a student to be able to look at something and understand what they need to do. As an adult, there are many times I will go to a conference or I'll get a new book that I'm reading or whatever it is. And I am so drawn to critiquing the visual organization of it. Even if you go to a website, you know, are there headings? Are there tabs? Are things bolded? Do they have bullets? Did they leave enough white space? Is there enough spacing between the lines? All of those things, that visual organization is so important. So again, know your learner, know how they learn best, and what you're creating should reflect their learning. And something I say a lot to staff too is sometimes I'll be working with staff and we'll be talking about some of their programming or what we need to implement. And I'll hear, well, they don't really need visuals anymore because I can just tell them and they know what to do. And I always just caution that a little bit because I always say, you know, I'm an adult and I use visual supports all throughout my day. You know, I give examples about how, like, I set out my clothes the night before. I set out my backpack with my lunchbox. I write myself little sticky notes of things I need to do the next day, or I put them into my phone with my list. You know, we as adults use visual supports all day long. Our world is set up with visual supports. We've got stoplights, we've got road signs, whatever it is. So imagine if you're a student that needs that level of visual support and it's not there and it's just taken away. So I always say, you know, sometimes visuals are just for coping and organization. You know, it doesn't always mean giving them a picture schedule. It means what other visual supports are you giving them to make meaning of their day. So visuals are just critical and important. And again, it helps you tap into more learning modes, right? We're not just presenting it in one way. This is just one of my favorite visuals. I just wanted to include this as part of the presentation, but it just talks about, again, 9 reasons to use visuals and why they are so important. In fact, my favorite is that, in fact, a couple of years ago, some staff members had this printed on a shirt for me, but it says visuals have no attitude. There's no tone, there's no frustration, there's no disapproval with visuals, right? Let the visuals do the talking, not me as the adult that may be frustrated at times. So yeah, again, importance of visuals, critical when you're designing parallel curriculum. So now I want to talk a little bit about resources. So again, I work in a larger school district, so I'm very fortunate. And I think Vicki would agree with this too, you know, when we first started thinking about parallel curriculum, it was hard to explain to people. It was hard to, I think, help administration understand why we needed so many resources to make this happen. And so that has improved so much over time. But I just want to say that if you're a teacher out there right now and you're listening to this and you're hearing this and you're not sure where to get started, involve administration in this right away, right from the beginning, because I want them to be able to see the benefit of it in the long run, and they will. It will take time, but they'll see students become more independent. They'll see students have better access to general education. They'll see general education teachers going, wow, this is so meaningful. I mean, my student has a real, real meaningful job in my classroom in relation to the content that I'm teaching. So involving administration at the beginning is really important. As we've gone over time, we've really been able to be fortunate enough to have a budget that does support us having access to a lot of these resources that I'm going to share. So I hesitated to share them a little bit, but at the same time, I want everybody to know about them. I want you guys to know these are the resources that our district is using and pulling from when we are paralleling. So I do have these hyperlinked. So when you do get the slideshow, you'll be able to click on them and kind of go to the site and kind of see, what it looks like. I'll go into one right now just so you can kind of get an idea, but these are all different types of resources that we use to parallel curriculum. So I'm going to go into, oops, here, I'm going to have to go out of my mode here for a second. So this is one we use a lot. It's called RAS Plus, or Reading A to Z is another way it's often referred. So we use this most often. One second here. I'm just going to go into the filing cabinet. So I'm going to go into planets. So you can see here what this site does is it provides us with a lot of different lower instructional level texts that give our students access to text, but at their instructional level that again parallels what it is that they're learning in the classroom. When you go into these books, I'm going to just go into one. This is Polish, so I want to find English here. When you go into this, there's a ton of resources down at the bottom that are printable as well. And a lot of times we will use these resources in these books. They have a lot of really nice images. We'll use these, we'll print them, we'll create things. This is kind of hard to explain virtually. But I know at least Vicki would understand what I'm saying here, but I use it's called my snipping tool. This is just a little tip or trick. So anybody listening, if you're using a PC, you have the snipping tool. It's a little scissor tool that is on your PC. I might take a book like this and I might use my snipping tool. I'm going to do this here quick. And I might snip out an image. Okay, can you guys all see this, what I just snipped? It's a little small.
Yeah, I can.
So I might snip out this image and print it. And I may then put this image into some type of a file folder activity for my student. You can see it has the planets and it has words. So I might make 2 copies of this. I paste one image down on my file folder. I have another laminated, the same image that I cut, and my student has to match the planets in the file, or match the planets in the solar system, whatever it might be. So I'm showing you that just so you guys know that, let me get out of my snippet tool here. It isn't just for reading or for getting lower level text. We a lot of times use something like Raz to get a lot of good visuals and images for students to print. Anybody out there that's interested in it, there's Raz and there's Science A to Z. We use this a lot for our paralleling. So like I can go into Science A through Z now, and you can see it divides science into earth, space, physical. You know, if I have a student doing, I'm going to do magnets in kindergarten. I scroll down here, there's a lot of different just on magnets, and you can see they have low, mid, and high. Different print offs that go with it, lots of access to books, and all of these, again, have a lot of nice visuals that accompany them and a lot of different activities you can do with students. So Raz is a really good resource that our district invested in a couple of years ago, and we use it a lot to parallel curriculum. A lot of these are programs that offer students choices. So I could program something to have 2, 3, 4 choices. A lot of them have resources that can be read out loud. I don't want you guys to think they're just done on the computer. They're not. They're things that we can download and print and create and make. And in a couple of slides, I'll show you some images of what that looks like. Other resources, News to You, Boom Cards, ReadWorks, Teachers Pay Teachers. The Jack Hartman Music Channel puts a lot of things to a lot of elementary concepts to song and music and video. So again, these are all hyperlinked. I just want you guys to know that if you're looking at getting started in parallel curriculum, these are some of the go-to resources that I would go to right away to start downloading and making and creating. I think when we first started, it was using a lot of Boardmaker, getting a lot of images on the web, making and creating my own stuff, printing stuff and using file folders. And there's still some of that. But now, in years since I've been working and doing this, there's a lot more available online that can sort of make your work a little bit more efficient. And some of it can be done on the computer so that the student can do it with independence. So maybe they've got an activity in the classroom that they do with their hands that's multisensory, and they're moving things around, writing, matching, whatever it might be. And then they go to the computer and they do, they listen to a Raz Kids book on planets or cells or whatever it is. So it can be, you know, a little bit of a combination of both. I hyperlink, or I included a slide on these because if you are, it doesn't even have to be middle school. If you're an elementary science teacher, middle or high school science teacher, these are some of my favorite resources for putting symbols with text and simplifying text language. These are by Attainment. And I did hyperlink one in here too, just so you guys could kind of see a little bit about what this looks like. So you can see this is a lesson on minerals. And so if I scroll down through this, you can see it puts those vocabulary words, it puts pictures with the vocabulary words. And you can see it's just symbols with every single word. And then there's a quiz associated with it as well. So I really like Attainment resources for my students that maybe are more in that level 2, level 3 that need those symbols to support their reading and support their learning. And Attainment does a really nice job of supporting all of the sciences, the physical science, the life science, and also the earth sciences. So just know about Attainment as a resource as well. Oops. Okay. Another area before we really get into looking at some examples. This is probably one of the more difficult areas where I see staff and even sometimes parents struggling to know, like, okay, well, how do we even begin to parallel this for my student? And like I said, maybe this is a student that has a cortical vision impairment. It's those real like sensory motor learners that maybe have dual diagnoses where maybe they're, you know, vision impairment plus hearing impairment, maybe very involved physically, whatever it might be. I call them more of our sensory motor type learners. But like I said at the beginning, there is always a way to parallel, always a way. You just sort of have to really think outside the box, but there's always a way. So the first option that I wanted to show you is something called Squishy Books, kind of a funny name. I linked a site in here that kind of explains a little bit more about Squishy Books, really simple and quick to make. I'll give you an example of, we have a student right now in 8th grade just studying the different types of rocks. So like igneous, metamorphic, all of that. And we have a couple Squishy Books for him. And all it is I use page protectors, heavy duty page protectors. And I fill those page protectors with any type of, so this student is also blind. I fill them with any type of material or resource that would help him understand what a metamorphic rock feels like and what it sounds like. And I fill the page protectors up with that. I use duct tape at the top to seal whatever I've put in it, and I put them into a binder. This can be for any type of content or any type of content out there. We had a student studying volcanoes. So this student had more vision. So we had like the Dollar Tree is kind of your best friend when it comes to this stuff. So we fill those page protectors up with red tinsel and, you know, yellow pom-pom balls for lava, whatever it might be. And then I like to include, if you can see in this image, you see how down in this corner it says ICT for turtle. I like to include words with it. So if I'm a staff person working with it and we're going through the Squishy Book and we're feeling it and touching it and exploring it, I have common vocabulary and language and words that I'm using with that student, which should match the content and language and vocabulary that they're hearing in the general education classroom. So they're getting that same vocabulary. These Squishy Books just give more meaning to those types of content, those types of content for our students that are more of our sensory motor learners. So Squishy Books are one option. I also love doing sensory bins. I've seen teachers get so creative and so awesome with these. I love this. It's down here. You can see here, this is just a sensory bin on the circulatory system. So a lot of times I'll see staff use sensory bins kind of thematically throughout the year based on like the season or, you know, Valentine's Day, whatever it might be. I love using them for content and thinking about, okay, if I'm going to explain the circulatory system for my student, I'm going to bring in some Play-Doh. I'm going to bring in, they in here, I think they have like beads. I would maybe find some cords to represent blood, red cords, whatever it might be. What can I put in this sensory bin that is going to bring this concept to life for my student? And again, if you've got your organizational plan in mind, you store that in a bin. And so the next year when another student is doing it, you can pull down that bin on your circulatory system and you've got a sensory bin based on that. Again, this is where like Pinterest, a lot of Facebook groups, which I'll talk about those in a little bit, have really good ideas for sensory bins. Google, how do I make the circulatory system seem more sensory? Whatever it is, you can get a lot of ideas just from digging online, and invest that time at the beginning, but then know that resource will be available to you the next time you need it. So those are sensory bins. Light boxes. I'm sure many of you are familiar with light boxes. I love to take light boxes for our students with cortical vision impairments and do a lot of vocabulary work, or do a lot of comprehension work. So if I'm going to go back to the volcanoes and the rocks, I've printed off images. And I always say I'm kind of like a hoarder with certain stuff. But if you guys remember the old overhead projector paper film, those work great for being able to print color images for students quickly. So I always hang on to those. And I will go online and I'll find pictures of all the different types of rocks. I'll find pictures of cells, whatever vocabulary that my student is studying in that classroom. I'll print them to a color printer. I'll make sure that the general education teacher and I are together on the vocabulary that we want my student to know. And then we do a lesson with the Lightbox with that vocabulary. And as we talk about it, we present those images on the Lightbox. So again, he's getting the vocabulary. He's getting, viewing some of the images that align with that vocabulary. Again, just more at his
a video I'm watching.
Those are more at his instructional level, and in a way that he can learn. So I love light boxes. I also love book boxes. So this, I've done more of these with sort of things around the school, but I think a way I love to explain a book box was a couple of years ago, our fifth graders always do like a living museum at the end of fifth grade, where they had to pick some type of an important person in history, and they have to write a report on them, and they have to research them, present on them in front of a group of people, that sort of thing. And to prepare a student for that, we put together book boxes for him, where he was Julius Caesar. So we had book boxes just on, how Julius Caesar dressed. We had book boxes on all of Julius Caesar's like favorite hobbies, like what he learned through his research. We had a book box on what it was like where Julius Caesar lived. We had a book box on like what types of things did Julius Caesar eat, back in the day. That is how we helped him learn about Julius Caesar. And then when he presented, he literally was there with all of his book boxes. Others could come and explore. And it was really cool to see other students exploring those book boxes and truly learning from them too, learning the content in a really meaningful way. So I love book boxes for content, but I also love book boxes for routines. Sometimes if I'm helping a family in the home, I'll talk a lot about, well, let's do a book box for the bedtime routine, or let's do a book box for getting ready for school. Especially our students with more of those visual impairments, book boxes can be really powerful. Experience boxes. This again, I love to do. I've used these more for a lot for transitions. So like for our students who maybe are more sensory motor and are getting ready to transition to the middle school, we'll put together a middle school experience box. So things that you are going to see, hear, and experience at the middle school. We always put like a locker lock in there. We put the sound of a bell, those kinds of things to just help get them prepared for that experience. But again, it can also be used for content in the classroom. So you're studying ancient Greece. Let's put some things in there in that box to help you study what it was like in ancient Greece back then. So really, again, thinking outside the box with these experience boxes. If I ever have a student, like we as a department have tried to sort of make some based on experiences that we know a lot of our students will experience throughout their years in school, like a birthday party, like a pep rally, like maybe going to a basketball game, going to a movie theater, you know, whatever it might be, to give them kind of a sort of a helpful way to transition them into those experiences. But like I said, good ways to use it as content too. Modifying books for students with cortical vision impairment. This is another really involve your vision teacher in this, but I just wanted staff to know, again, any learner, any concept, we can adapt it. But this is really just about taking some of, like, let's say the vocabulary words that they need to learn, making sure that you're presenting those in the color preferences of your student, making sure that you're using a flashlight to spotlight if needed, making sure you're using the appropriate backgrounds. Again, just knowing your learner, but knowing that these types of resources are out there and available. If you guys aren't familiar with this Paths to Literacy, this is an amazing site that I oftentimes go to and refer to for more of my sensory motor learners when I'm paralleling curriculum. And then just always remember audio materials. So, you know, things like Learning Alley, Bookshare, Audible, again, making sure our students are having access to content to be read out loud. That doesn't always have to be a teacher or a person next to them, but I can give them access to content at that grade level, but have them listen to it. So just always remembering those types of simple resources, as well as just simply having some things read out loud. This is just one of my favorite quotes to talk about. Then we're going to go into some examples, but tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, and involve me and I learn. And so I always try to kind of remember that when we're paralleling curriculum. How am I involving to really make this meaningful? So how am I involving the student in this task so that it is truly meaningful? Because I think that's when that heightened state of learning occurs. I always tell staff, like, a way that I think about this is the time I had to prepare like my first Thanksgiving dinner. You know, married, whatever, I'd always, you know, we'd always go to my parents or my husband's parents, and suddenly it was, oh, it's my turn. Now I have to do this. My mom could have told me everything. She could have, written everything down. That is not what I needed. I literally needed her to come here and involve me in it and do it with me. And that's exactly what she did. But again, that was such a more powerful learning experience for me because she was there. She was showing me how to do it first with everything there, and involving me in it. And that's really where I could then take everything I learned and apply it the next time I had to do that. So thinking about how you really need to be involved in that process to really have that heightened learning experience. So I'm just going to show you some examples now of what some of the parallel curriculum in our district looked like. I just did some middle school, but again, this is what I'm showing you. It can be elementary, middle, or high school. So just kind of try to think outside the box a little bit with this. These are in slides, but they have nice pictures of some of the resources that we're using. So let me go up here so you guys can see. I might make this bigger here for you guys. I'm gonna go up to the beginning here. So what our district has done is, you can see this is just, sorry, let me get through these. This is just a Google slide. So like a Google presentation. So this is flexible, and the student could do some of this parallel online on the computer. And then with each of these Google slides, we put together kits in large plastic bags and labeled, very sturdy plastic bags. So you'll see that our students can access this type of slide. Down in this left-hand corner, you'll see that there's a video associated with this. So again, there's lots of videos, there's lots of visuals. I'm going to stop this here, go on. And then on the slides where you see these like pictures of images that we've took, this is what's in the kit. So staff have access to this digital component of this Parallel, and then they have a kit that they can go to and they can pull for 6th grade science when they're studying matter. And you can see, if you look through this, a lot of these are a lot of the Velcro, take off, put on, visuals, matching, that sort of thing. I'm going to go until we can get, here is that, some of the videos that I was talking to you about. That puts a lot of content to song. So definitely check out Jack Hartman. He's on, I linked him earlier. But here again, I can see this is interactive and the student can play this and hear it. And then there is something associated with this in the kit that they can touch, move, and manipulate. Let's go to the next one here. So again, here, there's scissors, they're cutting and they're pasting. There's a lot of good visual supports. See how this task here is also very visually organized. So the student can kind of look at that quickly and know what to do. Here again, let me stop this video here. So here, this is where they have to be able to, this is an actual book, and they have to identify all the different states of matter in that room and then Velcro them onto the room. So there's a video kind of explaining this is how you do this, or I can give an actual kit in a bag to my student with something for us to be able to work on together to make this more meaningful and hands-on in real life. So those are some examples of 6th grade. Tell me if it's not advancing with me here, okay, guys? I'm going to go into some 7th grade examples. So here again, we've got a digital option for our students that can do that. And then for more of our sensory motor learners, we've got different types of kits that they can go and pull. We oftentimes store our kits in filing cabinets, larger filing cabinets. And we usually have the filing cabinets set by grade. And then within each grade is the content area. So I may have a 1st grade, a 2nd grade, a 3rd grade, a 4th grade, a 5th grade. And then I have the content areas: science, social studies, math, reading, whatever it is. Parallel curriculum can be used with individual goals and objectives too. Just so you all know that. Sometimes that has to be done because that is the way the student needs to learn, is through this type of means. Doesn't always just have to be parallel to general ed. We can also use these same types of concepts, visual supports, sensory motor type of options for our students who need that type of instruction for their IEP goals and objectives too. So you can see here, again, this is an example of something I said that Science A to Z and RAS has really good visuals. Here's an example of some really good visual supports built into that. Here again, you can see an example of what is in a kit again. So here, practice with bones and play the games. They have to be able to build a skeleton. So this is part of the kit. We pull this out. The student has to be able to Velcro and build the skeleton. And then this is a link to a game where they click and they drag the parts of the skeleton to build it. So multisensory. Let's just look at a couple more. I know I need to wrap it up. Deneen, do I need to like wrap it up right now?
No, you're good.
Let's see here. I'm going to go into here once so you guys can kind of see this. So here's some work on geography. Again, I just want you guys to get an idea of some of the images with some of the kits. If we were in person, obviously I'd be able to have a lot of these kits available for you guys to kind of look at and dig through. Let me see here. There's some in here. Let me see here if there's some. This one is a little bit higher, I think. Let's go on to the next one. Let's look at some 8th grade here. A lot of these that you see in these slide decks, the slide decks are oftentimes used as sort of a bridge for our general education teachers too. Sometimes I'll sit down with a general education teacher and they'll be like, I have no idea how to parallel anything about rocks. So then it's like, okay, let me show you some examples. Let's bring up this slide deck. Let me show you some examples. Let me show you what's in the kit. And just seeing the kit and pulling out the materials and seeing how we can have students interactive just gets their ideas going. So sometimes just seeing it is really important. But here you can see, like, I linked these earlier. If you guys remember, I talked about the attainment series. This is another thing we have in the kit that's an actual book. So all these vocabulary words are put to visuals. And you can see here again, this is just all symbols with words. Nice visuals laid out. It takes you to the lesson, or they can have the lesson done in the kit. It says here, it says, go to the rocks file folder. You're going to start matching igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. So the student goes to that kit, they pull it out, and there they've got their hands-on activities. So in our district, we chose to organize digitally with these slide decks and have with each slide deck have an associated kit. So that way, it kind of opened up the doors for some of our students that maybe didn't always need all of those hands-on multisensory, but could do it more independently on the computer as long as it was read out loud and they could click and drag and move things. So again, it just sort of depends upon your student, your learner, but it took us a couple of years to start to kind of get this plan in place that, you know what, we're creating all of this parallel, but we have nothing done digitally. And then it would be, oh, well, I had a student 4 years ago and I created a bunch of stuff on rocks, but it's gone. I can't find it. It was left at the building and now it's gone. We're like, we have to start creating some kind of a digital footprint for our materials and have something printable that can be reused. So that's kind of how our district has sort of evolved in this. Just kind of took us some time to get there. I'm sharing these. These are some really good social media sites that I follow a lot just to get really good ideas on how to parallel. So I do have them linked. You can click in there, join them. Really good resources in here and a lot of free resources. So if I'm kind of stuck on, oh my gosh, how am I going to parallel this? I'll hop out to these pages and I'll kind of dig around. And just following them gives me ideas too. They're really good to follow too for thematic purposes. You know, Veterans Day just happened and occurred. I need to find a way to parallel a lesson for my 3rd grader who is learning about veterans. They're really good about posting and sharing that stuff based on what's happening in our world and what's happening on the calendar too. So definitely follow those if you can. These last couple slides here, and then so I wanted to get in a little bit about the parents' role in this. So one of the biggest recommendations that I make to families, sometimes I feel like, especially our students who are more involved, where there's a missing link to the communication to the general education teacher, because there's a special education teacher involved and a case manager involved. And sometimes it just is suddenly the parents only communicating with that specialist. or maybe the team, but you're not having that link to the general education teacher. So you don't know what's happening in that general education classroom. So I always say, if you can, from the very beginning of the year, express that need, set high expectations for the need for communication from the general education teacher. If there is that strong communication, you're going to know what's going on in the classroom. And then you can ask, okay, well, you're studying Veterans Day. How is my son participating in that? What are you having my child do? So I ask things like, is there a weekly update that the teacher sends? Is there a social media page? Is there a Google Classroom? Something that could give you that communication back to the general education classroom so that you can advocate for this. Advocate for time for teachers to plan, resources to build, training for staff. And I always say, just make sure there's administrators at that table so they can be involved in this discussion. That was one thing that Vicki was amazing with, is she'd say, what help do you need from me? What can I do? And I would let her know. I would say, you know what, I really need your help in talking with administration about this. I'm having a hard time getting this resource. Sometimes it's just heard a little better, I'm going to be honest, when it comes right from parents. So just being that advocate to say, hey, my child's teachers need this time. And it doesn't even have to be a huge time investment. I think, like I said, every other Tuesday for 1 hour, whatever it might be. But it's being that advocate for the time and creation of the resources. Sharing your child's strengths and interests. They're really powerful learning tools. So I know everybody does that really well. But I think sometimes parents just knowing that it's okay to make sure you're sharing those heavily with staff, because sometimes staff might need a little encouragement to use those interests, especially if sometimes students need to use their interests just to make their learning functional. So definitely sharing that. Sharing your successes that your child has had with Parallel and its impact on their learning. I think this might take time to build over time, but if you've had success, share it with administration, share it with those people who can really allocate those resources so they can see the difference that it makes. And then just understanding, like I said, that universal design for learning, that, helping teachers understand that what you're doing is necessary for my child, but it's really going to benefit many students in your classroom. The visual supports that you're providing, the way you're laying out the materials and the repetition, whatever it is, what's essential for my child is likely going to benefit many. So just kind of helping teachers understand that too is important. That's what I see as the parents' role. Teachers, and I say this knowing that this is probably the biggest struggle we have, but special education teachers, you have to involve general education. They're the content experts. They need to be the ones identifying what students need to know in the content classroom. I can be the expert on the students' IEP goals and objectives, but I want that classroom teacher telling me, these are the 5 things I need this student to know out of this unit. Because they are that expert. And again, it gives that accountability back to general education. I'm going to be there to support them the whole way. But we have to just make sure they're at the table creating and making and designing this type of curriculum with us. Knowing those strengths and needs. If you create something that that doesn't align with your students' learning profile, like it doesn't provide visuals, it doesn't provide enough repetition, there's not choices, it's really not going to be useful. You really have to know your students' strengths and needs. Again, you're going to have to be a really big advocate for resources. Do I need time? Do I need a staff person? Do I need anything from a color printer to lamination sheets to Velcro to a new resource to a subscription? Whatever it is, advocating is a big part of getting started and maintaining parallel curriculum. And again, ask your parents to help you. Organization and storage, just have a plan for that. Sort of have your vision ahead of time so that you know that these resources can be used again. Are the materials age appropriate? I say this because if I have a sophomore student in biology, I want to make sure that the parallel curriculum resources that I'm giving them in the classroom look age appropriate as much as possible. Did you use a variety of modes? Multisensory, think back to all of the book boxes, the sensory boxes, all of that. Combine as many of those and use as many of those senses as you possibly can. High interest, tapping into those students' interests. And then just really making it meaningful. I think if I sit down and I say, okay, I know my student, what would be meaningful to them? How for them to learn rocks? What is the most meaningful way for them to do this? Then start implementing your parallel curriculum. That meaningful question is really important. And then I always tell teachers, be tight on the goal, but flexible on the means. We're going to be flexible about how we get there, but we are going to stay true to this content that you need this student to know and learn. Just additional ideas, just things to keep in the back of your head for parallel curriculum: file folders, manipulatives, sorting tasks, adapted books, videos, games, projects, cooking, hands-on activities, experiments, scavenger hunts. I should have put Dollar Tree on here because I visit Dollar Tree often. And a lot of times I find myself saving very random things that nobody would probably save, but I see it and I'm like, you know what? I can make that into a really cool sorting task. So I'm saving, you know, my crystal light bottles, you know, whatever it is. You'll find yourself, if you really dig into this, using a lot of resources that you never thought you'd have to use. Okay. I know I went over, but I could talk about this stuff forever, but questions?
We did have one question in the chat box, well, to me probably, on how, if you're in a district that isn't doing this, how do you encourage them to do that?
Oh, I know that's a really hard one. I'm just going to read this. Use A to Z. Okay, will the slides be available? So the first thing in encouraging to use it, I would feel free to share this presentation, but I would encourage you to go to your administrator first, but sort of have your plan and homework done for what student need is this going to meet. So I have this pocket of students, or I have this pocket of students, and I need this to be able to meet those needs, and start maybe small at the beginning. I mean, maybe it's truly just, I need a more visual curriculum. You know what I mean? I need to buy a couple of these attainment books so that my student can read with symbols. I mean, if you have to start small, start small. Just do not be afraid to ask. I think that anytime you tie it back to, this is meeting this student's needs, or this is needed for this student, I think that is more powerful for administration. Parallel curriculum is hard in that there's not like necessarily a person that goes around and trains on parallel curriculum. But if you ever see, Ann Carlson will occasionally do, they call them make and take workshops. If you ever see that as a teacher or as a parent, I would definitely encourage you to advocate for attending, or parent advocate for staff attending, because those make and take workshops really do teach you a lot about how to like use resources and make and create things for students in a way that they can learn. So those make and take workshops that they offer, definitely take those up when Ann Carlson offers them. It's hard getting started, because I remember being overwhelmed too. And I think what I learned was I was doing a lot of it myself, and I had to sort of at the beginning, because I kind of had to muddle through it to see how it worked. But then I really had to advocate for a person. Like, I need somebody to help me with this. I need somebody to have an hour or two a day. If you start small, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be all day, but I need an hour for somebody to be able to create these type of resources for students. Or I need this one curriculum, whatever it might be. Just start small and build from there. Because I think when you start small, you learn a lot in the process too. And yeah, I think, dig into the resources that I shared, dig into some of those curriculums. And if you think you have one that there's a need that might, or there's one that might fit a need that you have, inquire about purchasing it and just dig in. Follow some of those social media pages. Just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get started. And if you can kind of get an ally in that gen ed teacher from the beginning, that really helps too. I think something that was powerful that I've seen over the years is when general education teachers will set aside time, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, to actually use these resources with our students in the classroom. Because again, they're the content experts. So now I've created something with the gen ed teacher, and now the gen ed teacher is going to use that resource and teach my student. I think that is also very powerful, because the gen ed teacher is like, oh my gosh, I feel like oftentimes they're just searching for ways to be able to feel like they're teaching a student, or they're actually reaching them. And sometimes parallel curriculum does that for them, and it kind of hooks them, and they're like, I want more of that. I want to do that more often. So if you can kind of team together, and along with your parent, and asking for those resources, sometimes there's power in those numbers too. I don't know if that helps. And call me too. You've got my email. I can help walk through and muddle through some of that stuff at the beginning as well. And one other thing too, if you are a middle or high school teacher, don't be afraid to go down to elementary. You know what I mean? If you're from a smaller school and you've got a middle school student, be like, okay, I need to go see what they're doing in second grade science and what resources they have, because that's where my students' instructional level is. I'm going to just go down, see, look, pull what I can. So even going down grade levels is appropriate too, because sometimes there's resources right there that can be more easily adapted that you just don't know about. So.
Thanks. Any other question for Larissa?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Hi.
I loved your presentation. I'm a parent. It's so great to see these things. I didn't really even understand how they're even attempting to adapt some of these things for my daughter. So great job. What would be the best way for me to approach her special education teachers with your presentation? Like send it in an email. Is it going to be on? But I don't want to just send along, the PowerPoint. I think that your presentation was really striking as well. So I guess what is the best way I should do that, do you guys think?
Gosh, I think a really powerful way would be to, if there is something that they're doing in the classroom right now, I don't know, like a concept or, something like that. I think, let's say they're learning about, I'm trying to think of something right now.
It's like second grade. They're second grade. She's a second grader. So a lot of it is focused on reading and comprehension.
Okay.
Okay.
So reading and comprehension. So bringing in, I would think if there is something that they're working on right now, and I don't know your daughter.
She's probably closer to a kinder beginning reader level while they're in second grade level right now.
Okay.
So that's what I've been struggling with.
A little above Erin. I know Shonda, so a little above.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi.
Okay. So I think what would be powerful, and now I don't know if this is, would be overstepping, but sometimes them seeing something like done and completed.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Might help them understand, well, what do you mean by how do I parallel this? So I don't know if they have a book or, a reading group or whatever it is that she's in.
They do, yeah.
So, okay, can we take this book and how can we make it visual? If she's got to answer comprehension to that, you know, can I put visuals to that? Can I put fewer choices? Can I visually change it so that it is more visually clear to her? Can I eliminate the writing? Sometimes I think if they would actually see it, it might help them understand what you mean by parallel curriculum.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you would, you know, feel comfortable doing that, I do think it's most powerful when staff see, okay, well, here's what I'm teaching and here's how it is modified.
Sure. Yeah.
I know as a parent that can be kind of uncomfortable, like, well, here, let me show you what I would do to modify.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so if kind of bridging that in a really respectful way, which I know obviously parents always do.
Oh, yeah, and I
Yeah.
love her gen ed teacher. I love her special ed teachers. I mean, they're doing a great job. We're in the Fargo district, and
Okay.
I
Yeah.
will tell you, it's just so big. It's so
Oh,
large.
sure.
There's so
Yeah.
many kids. Everybody just kind of gets lost. So,
Yes.
you know,
Oh,
sometimes I feel like, you know, that there could be some of these sort of methods that just haven't even been brought up yet to some of these really new teachers. So, yeah.
yeah. I mean, even for me, sitting down with a gen ed teacher who's maybe new, I start by asking them, okay, well, tell me something that all students are expected to learn. Okay.
Right.
So we talk through that. Okay. Now tell me about the child. Okay. Now these are ideas on how we can design and create, and they kind of have to see it
Mhm.
to really understand it. Then it makes it easier the next time because they can
Yeah.
take what they modified that time and now apply it to this, and then they can transfer it to a different content area. Seeing it really does help. I think maybe, yeah, seeing this presentation might help.
For sure.
Definitely feel free to give them my email, share as a resource.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. I'm gonna work on that and see what I come up with. And will this, Deneen, did you say this would be on YouTube? Like, can they watch it on YouTube?
I put the recording on a YouTube video, and that so that way the link is right there. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I'll send out the recording plus the material, and
Okay.
you'll have all of that. So
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
And
Thanks,
Shanna,
Larissa.
does
I
your
appreciate it.
district have access to an assistive technology specialist?
They do, I believe. We're in West Fargo Public, so I believe they
Okay.
do. Yeah, there
So
is one.
that's just another thing. I mean, ask for a consult. I mean, that AT
Sure.
specialist, you know, this is really a forms of assistive technology, you know, low tech, it can be high tech, it can be low tech, but visual
Sure.
supports, all of that is assistive technology. So even asking, you know, hey, can the assistive technology support specialist support you in this too? You know, they can be tapping into maybe that as a resource as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll check into that. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful, you guys. Thanks.
all right. Well, thank you again, Larissa, for
Yes, thank you all
this
for
was
listening. I'm sorry
great.
that I kept us long.
It's fine. This was wonderful. I learned a lot tonight. I really
Oh,
did.
well, good.
I'm gonna
We're
be
Larissa,
all
can I
on
just
a
ask
phone,
you
Yelena.
one quick question?
Yeah.
sure.
I just have, so I know you talked a lot about special education. Can a person be on a 504 versus an IEP, or do they have to be on an IEP?
You know, even with a student who's on a 504, that team still has to talk through appropriate accommodations, right? You know, what does that child need? You know, what parts of their functioning are affected, right? That's a question they have to ask. And does that impact their learning? So I think if that 504 reflects that, you know, my child needs more type of visual supports, my child needs, you know, a lot of some of the things that I explained tonight, just more like predictability and structure in their work. Yeah, these types of things can be provided. I think as long as the 504 reflects that those are needs that they have. And then I would say too, you know, there are related service providers as part of a 504 as well. So maybe I would make sure that, you know, those related service providers are part of that 504 plan as well. Because some of the resources that are used in this may be more specific to special education versus general education. Do you know what I mean? Where a general education teacher may not always have access to something like Boardmaker to create visuals. They may need access to special education for that. But like me as an assistive technology specialist, I am a related service on a number of 504s throughout the district. So if that's a related service that the child needs, then I would just make sure that that's in the 504 plan.
Okay. Because yeah, I mean, when you say that, like he has ADHD, so very much the structure and knowing what his day is going to be is very important to him. And so when it doesn't go that way, then I get calls. So yes.
Yeah. So I think just really making sure the 504 reflects that and reflects those needs, then yeah, I mean, things like that, like visual clarity, structure of work, those are things that can be provided through a 504, as long as the team has determined that, 504 is appropriate versus an IEP.
Yeah, I've been told he won't qualify for an IEP. And so that's why I'm on the 504. I get a lot of I got a lot of pushback on what I want on the 504, but I usually end up somewhat getting somehow around it.
Sure. Yeah. So. Yeah. And definitely there again to really partner with the gen ed teacher, because that's really that's the person that's going to be implementing that 504 in the classroom.
Yeah. And she's amazing this year, so I can't. But yeah, so it's just how visual this really is. And that's how I know he functions is very visually. So it's just like, this would just be wonderful for him. So
yes. Yeah. And, the older he gets too, like teaching him, I know he's young now, but advocate for that. You know what I mean? If that's how he knows he learns, helping his teachers understand that about him. You know what I mean? If he can get there, that's something to instill early if you can, because that definitely makes a difference as they get up into middle and high school too.
Yeah. And especially when you talk about like that experience box, and I know middle school is next year. So yeah. I mean, I feel like sometimes general education teachers, special education teachers, I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right? But I mean, sometimes it's as simple as like when you talk about visual structure and visual clarity. I've been in a classroom before, and it was a student who had autism, and it was just a blank sheet of math paper, and they had to write down their problems and complete it. And just that in itself is very overwhelming. You look at it, it's a blank sheet of paper. There's no concept of how much I have to do or when I can be done. There's no visuals for where to put my work. There's not a box. There's not lines. There's not just like, again, if teachers, they don't know what they don't know, but even a teacher just simply knowing about, okay, well, let's get some lined math paper, or like talked about those templates at the beginning too. A lot of times, if you can design a template for a student, it can work for them in math, design a template for them in science, design a template for them. And then the teacher knows that. And then they know, oh, that's how I need to present his work. He just needs a template. He needs 10 problems, and he needs a box to put his answer, and he needs lines so he can line up his numbers. I feel like once they know that, that's what they want to do, because it's so much better for them and for the student and their learning, but they just don't know what they don't know. So just being, an advocate for that, asking for, what other resources do we have? But I've been in classrooms where I've literally been like, you know what, we are just going to put some boxes on this sheet, and we're going to, fold the paper in half. And it can be really powerful for teachers to be like, oh, okay, it's that simple. It's that simple. That's all it really takes. And once they see it, they're like, okay, I'll keep doing that. I'll implement it. It's just getting that initial kind of start, and as a parent, I think that's a challenge because you're not in those classrooms to do that. But are there related service providers that you can involve that can be directing that teacher, that sort of thing? Does that help? Yes, thank you.
One thing that I have a question on is, depending upon the size of the PowerPoint, this code would also take you to your presentation, correct?
Yes. And I can just send you just a visual of the QR code if you'd like.
Well, send both, because then that
Send
way I
both?
can include both of that in what I send to everybody.
Sure. Yep. I
Okay.
can include the QR code and I'll include the presentation.
Okay.
And there was one other thing I was going to send too. What was it? At the beginning. I'll probably think of it at midnight tonight.
Yeah.
Then I'll send it. Yeah. But yeah, I'll do both those. I'll do that right when we're finished. So.
Okay, good. Thanks. All right, everyone. Well, thank you. I learned a lot tonight. So.
Oh, well, I'm glad. And thank you so much for doing this to kind of help everybody understand more about what it is. And I just want every parent and every educator out there, I have a ton of respect for all of you because I know this is really hard work, but the fact that you're all here and wanting to implement and try just speaks volumes. So thank you guys so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you guys. Take care, everyone. Bye.